When we go through a breakup or divorce, it's like the ground beneath us has shifted. One day, life felt familiar, predictable, even safe, and the next day it feels like we're navigating a storm without a compass. And here's the thing, most people expect themselves to just get over it. They tell themselves, I should be fine by now, I shouldn't feel this way, as if grief and loss follow a schedule. But the truth is, emotional pain doesn't obey timelines. It's messy, unpredictable, and intensely human. The first step toward healing is understanding that what you're feeling is not a sign of weakness. It's a reflection of your deep investment in a relationship, of your capacity to love and to connect. That pain is proof of your humanity. Breakup-related depression isn't just sadness. It's a complex mix of emotions that can swirl together, sometimes feeling impossible to separate. There's grief, the deep, hollow ache of losing a familiar presence in your life. There's anger at your ex, at yourself, at circumstances, sometimes at the universe. There's guilt, questions like, could I have done something differently? And am I to blame for this? And sometimes, surprisingly, there's relief, particularly when a relationship has been fraught with conflict or disconnection. All of these reactions are normal. They're not just normal, they're expected. Recognizing the difference between normal post-breakup sadness and clinical depression is critical. Everyone experiences grief differently, and duration alone doesn't define whether something is pathological. What matters is intensity and impact. Are you able to function, to get out of bed, to eat, to engage with life in any way? If the sadness is persistent, overwhelming, and interfering with your daily functioning, that's a signal to seek professional support. But even before we reach that point, understanding the emotional landscape helps you navigate it more effectively. Awareness is the first step toward control. When you can name what you're feeling, when you can separate anger from grief or guilt from regret, you take a subtle but powerful step from chaos toward clarity. It's also important to understand that emotions are not good or bad. We live in a culture that labels sadness as weakness and anger as something to suppress, but emotions are signals, they're information, but they're trying to tell you something about your values, your attachments, and your unmet needs. When you approach your emotional experience with curiosity instead of judgment, you unlock the power to learn from it rather than being trapped by it. Think of it as a map of your inner world. The more accurately you read it, the more skillfully you can navigate your path forward. And here's the philosophical truth that can shift your perspective. Loss reminds us that nothing in life is permanent, that attachment is both beautiful and fragile. This awareness can be painful, yes, but it's also liberating. It teaches resilience, it teaches self-reliance, and most importantly, it reminds you that your capacity to feel deeply is not a liability. It's your strength. When you honor your emotions instead of fighting them, you begin to reclaim your power. So the next time you feel that ache in your chest, that heaviness in your heart, or that storm of conflicting emotions, don't run from it. Recognize it, name it, allow it to exist without judgment. In doing so, you turn what feels like a personal weakness into a profound opportunity for insight, growth, and eventual healing. They live in because understanding your emotional landscape is not just the first step, it's the foundation upon which everything else, every act of resilience, every moment of self-discovery will be built. Remember this, your feelings are not your enemy. They are your guideposts, leading you toward a stronger, wiser, and more authentic version of yourself. When we talk about the emotional aftermath of a breakup or divorce, it's not enough to simply feel our way through the pain. To truly navigate this period, we need to understand the underlying patterns that shape how we experience loss. And that's where attachment comes in. Attachment isn't just a childhood concept. It's the lens through which we perceive relationships, intimacy, and ultimately separation. It's the architecture of our emotional world, and it profoundly influences how we respond when someone we care about leaves our lives. Some people naturally approach relationships with a secure base. They are comfortable with closeness. They can trust, and they can also maintain their independence. For them, loss is painful, but it's manageable. They grieve, they reflect, and they eventually find equilibrium. Others, however, navigate from a place of anxiety or avoidance Anxiously attached individuals often experience breakups as catastrophic events. Their minds spin with question scenarios and what ifs. They ruminate over every detail, every perceived misstep, trying to regain a sense of control over something that by its nature cannot be controlled. Avoidantly attached individuals, on the other hand, may seem outwardly detached, suppressing grief or distraction seeking to escape discomfort. But suppression doesn't equal absence. Their pain exists beneath the surface, often delayed, intense, and isolating when it eventually emerges. Understanding your attachment style isn't about labeling yourself, it's about awareness. It's the difference between wandering blindly through emotional turbulence and learning to navigate it with insight. When you recognize your patterns, you can anticipate your reactions, temper impulsive behaviors, and implement strategies that are aligned with your psychological wiring. For example, if you notice yourself ruminating, asking, why did they leave? What's wrong with me? You can consciously interrupt that cycle and practice self-compassion instead. If you find yourself shutting down or avoiding emotional confrontation, you can gently reintroduce reflective practices. Journaling, therapy, or even structured conversations with trusted friends that allow the grief to surface in a safe and contained way. There's also a philosophical lesson embedded in attachment and loss. Our need for connection is a universal human condition, but it is not the sum total of who we are. Loss forces us to confront the tension between dependency and independence, closeness and autonomy. It asks us to sit with discomfort, to tolerate uncertainty, and to rediscover the parts of ourselves that were present before the relationship began. This is not easy work. It is uncomfortable, and it requires courage. The courage to acknowledge that our patterns may have contributed to our pain without condemning ourselves for them. And here's the empowering truth. Attachment styles are not fixed. They are flexible, plastic, and responsive to conscious effort. With self-awareness, practice, and sometimes guidance from a professional, anxious patterns can become more regulated, avoidant tendencies can soften, and secure, resilient ways of relating can emerge. This transformation doesn't erase the pain of loss, but it equips you to handle it with intelligence, clarity, and ultimately grace. So as you reflect on the breakup or divorce in your life, consider not just the person who left, but the patterns you bring into every relationship. How you attach shapes your experience of loss, yes, but it also shapes your path toward healing. By understanding your attachment, you reclaim agency. You stop being at the mercy of old patterns and start making conscious choices that serve your growth and your well-being. Remember, every relationship teaches us something about how we love, how we cope, and how we heal. Recognizing these lessons isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's a profound act of self-liberation. And here's the takeaway to hold on to. The pain of loss is inevitable, but being shaped by your attachment style doesn't have to be limiting. Awareness transforms vulnerability into insight, chaos into clarity, and grief into a roadmap for emotional evolution. When you understand your inner wiring, you don't just survive a breakup. You grow stronger, wiser, and more capable of building the love and life you truly deserve. One of the most insidious traps after a breakup or divorce is the way our minds can turn against us. You've probably felt it, that constant replaying of the past, the what ifs, the endless spiral of blame. Why didn't I? Say this, if only I had done that differently, I'm not good enough for love. These thoughts can feel like a storm you can't escape, and the more you fight them, the stronger they seem to become. This is rumination, our brain's relentless way of trying to solve a problem that, by definition, has no immediate solution. But here's the critical insight. Rumination doesn't heal you, doesn't bring clarity or closure. It reinforces sadness, amplifies anxiety, and corrodes self-esteem. Breaking free from this cycle requires both awareness and deliberate action. The first step is noticing it. So often we're caught in autopilot, letting our minds run these loops without realizing how much they are shaping our emotions. Start by simply observing, here's that thought again. I see it, I acknowledge it. Labeling it rather than identifying with it creates a subtle but powerful separation between you and the thought. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. And that distinction is transformative. Once you've recognized these patterns, you can begin to interrupt them. Cognitive reframing is one of the most effective tools in this process. It doesn't mean ignoring your feelings or pretending the loss doesn't hurt. It means shifting the lens through which you interpret your experience. Instead of thinking, I'm unlovable because this relationship ended, try, this relationship ended and I am still worthy of love. I am learning, growing, and discovering what I truly need. The difference may seem subtle, but it rewires your neural pathways over time. Every time you consciously choose a constructive interpretation, you weaken the power of negative self-talk and strengthen the muscle of resilience. Another powerful approach is mindfulness, learning to anchor yourself in the present moment rather than dwelling in the past. Rumination is, at its core, a fixation on what has already happened, a mental replay of events we cannot change. By practicing mindfulness, whether through meditation, focused breathing, or simply paying attention to your immediate surroundings, you pull yourself out of the endless loop. You remind your mind that life is unfolding right now, and that the present moment is where real action and healing can occur. Journaling is another practical tool. Writing down your thoughts and emotions externalizes them, making them tangible and easier to analyze. When you see the patterns on paper, you gain perspective. You can identify recurring themes, recognize irrational self-criticisms, and consciously replace them with constructive, truth-based reflections. This is not just a therapeutic exercise. It's a form of self-education, teaching you to approach your inner dialogue with the same rigor and compassion you would offer a close friend. Philosophically, breaking the cycle of rumination is also about embracing impermanence. The mind wants certainty, closure, and answers that may never fully exist. Accepting that life is inherently unpredictable allows you to loosen the grip of obsessive thinking. Your thoughts are powerful, yes, but they are not prophecy, death. They are signals, information, not commands. When you learn to interpret them wisely, you regain control over your inner world rather than being swept along by it. So when you feel yourself spiraling, pause, observe, reframe, ground yourself in the present, write it down and remind yourself that your mind, though powerful, is not your master. It is your tool. By breaking the cycle of rumination and negative self-talk, you transform pain into insight. Self-talk, you transform pain into insight, confusion into clarity, and loss into the foundation for personal growth. And here's the core takeaway to carry with you. The thoughts that keep you trapped are not truths. They are invitations. Invitations to look deeper, to act consciously, and to reclaim your mind as a source of strength rather than a generator of suffering. Master your thoughts, and you master the pathway from heartbreak to healing. After a breakup or divorce, one of the most profound challenges isn't just coping with sadness. It's facing the question of who you are outside the context of that relationship. For so long, your identity may have been intertwined with someone else's. Shared routines, shared goals, shared vision of life. When that framework disappears, it can feel like your sense of self has been shattered. And that's when many people fall into a dangerous trap, defining their value by the absence of someone else, measuring their worth through what was lost. But here's the reality. Your value is intrinsic. It's not determined by a relationship, by another person's presence, or even by their absence. Rediscovering that truth is at the heart of rebuilding identity and self-worth. They Live in Yourself begins with a deliberate process of self-reflection. Ask yourself, who am I outside of this relationship? Ask yourself, who am I outside of this relationship? Not as a parent, a partner, or a friend, but as an individual. What are your passions, your strengths, your values? What makes you feel alive, energized, and purposeful? This isn't a philosophical exercise for the sake of theory. It's a practical roadmap. The answers you uncover will guide the choices you make, the habits you cultivate, and the life you begin to reconstruct. One of the most powerful steps in this process is reclaiming activities and interests that may have been neglected. Perhaps you gave up hobbies, passions, or social connections to fit the dynamics of the relationship. Now is the time to return to them, and maybe even explore new ones, engaging in creative expression, physical challenges, or intellectual pursuits, reminds you of your capabilities, and reignites your sense of autonomy. These acts aren't distractions from grief. They are active expressions of self-respect and self-investment. Every step you take toward your own growth reinforces the understanding that your happiness does not depend on anyone else. Another essential element is learning to internalize validation. We are wired to seek approval from others, especially those we love, but placing your worth in someone else's hands is both limiting and perilous. Instead, focus on what you can control: your integrity, your commitment to personal growth, and your willingness to treat yourself with compassion. Affirm your strengths daily, recognize your resilience, and celebrate even small victories. These practices build an internal foundation of confidence that no external circumstance can erode. Philosophically, this process is also about recognizing that identity is fluid, not fixed. Life is not a static story. It's a series of chapters, each offering the opportunity to redefine who you are. A. Breakup or divorce, while painful, is not a permanent verdict on your value. It's a transition point, a pivot, a doorway to rediscovering and ultimately strengthening the person you are always capable of being. This perspective transforms what feels like an ending into an invitation for growth. And there's another profound insight here. When you rebuild your sense of self and self-worth, you naturally improve your relationships in the future. People are drawn to those who are grounded, whole, and self-aware. And when your sense of value is internalized rather than dependent on another person's validation, you create healthier, more balanced connections that are based on mutual respect, not neediness or fear. So in practical terms, start small. Dedicate time each day to activities that reinforce your passions, strengths, and independence. Reflect on your values and align your actions with them. Affirm your worth in ways that are tangible, consistent, and empowering. And remember, every step toward reclaiming yourself is a step away from the shadow of loss and toward the light of self-mastery. Here's the closing truth to hold on to. You are not defined by the relationships you've lost. You are defined by the way you rise after them. Rebuilding your identity and self-worth isn't just recovery. It's a declaration that your life, your value, and your potential are yours to reclaim, and no ending can ever take that away.
After a breakup or divorce, the temptation to escape your feelings is enormous. It's natural. You've been hurt, and pain is uncomfortable.
The human mind will often reach for anything that offers temporary relief, whether that's scrolling endlessly on your phone, overworking yourself, numbing with substances, or withdrawing from friends and family. These avoida-may strategies can feel like safety nets, but in reality, they prolong suffering and prevent real healing. The difference between coping and avoidance isn't always obvious at first. Coping allows you to process and integrate your experience, while avoidance simply pushes it out of sight where it lingers, unresolved, waiting to resurface later in more intense and unpredictable ways. Healthy coping mechanisms begin with conscious choice. You have to decide moment by moment to face the discomfort rather than run from it. This might look like therapy, where a trained professional guides you through the grief, helping you understand your patterns and reactions. It might look like support groups, where you witness others' experiences and realize that your pain is not only valid, but shared. It might look like exercise, mindfulness, journaling, or creative expression, tools that don't eliminate the pain, but give it a channel to flow safely, constructively, and with purpose. These methods transform your suffering into insight, resilience, and eventually empowerment. Avoidance, on the other hand, operates on the illusion of control. You might distract yourself to feel in charge, telling yourself that if you don't think about the relationship, you won't hurt. But grief is not something that can be locked away indefinitely. Ignored emotions accumulate like water behind a dam until they burst unexpectedly, often at the worst possible moment. Philosophically, avoidance is a resistance to reality. It is a refusal to sit with impermanence, uncertainty, and the truth that life is always in flux. Consciously choosing to confront your pain rather than avoid it is an act of courage. It acknowledges that discomfort is temporary, but growth is enduring, structured emotional exposure. It may feel counterintuitive, but deliberately allowing yourself to feel what you're avoiding, sitting with a difficult memory, acknowledging a painful emotion, even writing a letter you'll never send, teaches your nervous system that you can survive discomfort. Over time, what once seemed unbearable becomes manageable. What once felt like weakness becomes strength. Every encounter with your true feelings reinforces the understanding that you are resilient, capable, and in control of your response to life, even when life feels chaotic. Even when life feels chaotic. Another critical dimension of coping is building routine and consistency. Loss often disrupts daily life, creating a void where structure once existed. Establishing a balanced routine, consistent sleep, nutrition, physical activity, and social engagement anchors your mind and body. It's a practical framework for emotional stability. Structure doesn't eliminate grief, but it provides a container, a reliable base from which you can confront and integrate your emotions safely. And finally, consider the philosophical truth at the heart of this practice. Healing is not linear. It's not a straight line from pain to peace. It's a series of forward steps, backward slips, and gradual expansions of awareness. Healthy coping respects this process, giving you the tools to navigate the ebb and flow of grief without becoming overwhelmed or avoiding it entirely. Avoidance may provide temporary comfort, but true resilience, insight, and emotional freedom are built in the moments you choose engagement over evasion. So, when you feel the urge to distract, numb, or escape, pause. Ask yourself, is this helping me process, or am I avoiding? Choose the path that strengthens rather than diminishes you. Embrace the discomfort as a teacher, not an enemy. And remember, the coping skills you cultivate today become the foundation for not only surviving loss, but thriving afterward. Here's the key takeaway to carry with you. Avoidance delays healing. Conscious coping accelerates growth. The pain will come, yes, but how you meet it defines not just this chapter of your life, but the person you become on the other side. Face it, work with it, and you reclaim your power. After you've navigated the storm of emotions, understood your attachment patterns, interrupted destructive thought cycles, reclaimed your identity, and adopted healthy coping strategies, there comes a moment when you realize that this ending, this breakup or divorce, is not the conclusion of your story. It is, in fact, the beginning. And this is where embracing growth becomes essential. Growth is not about erasing the past, pretending the pain didn't exist, or rushing into the next relationship. Growth is about integrating your experience, learning from it, and using it as a foundation for a more conscious, more empowered version of yourself. Every relationship teaches us something. The end of a relationship, painful as it is, reveals patterns we may have been blind to, habits that limit us, and choices that no longer serve our highest good. It is a mirror reflecting both strengths and areas for development. Some of these lessons are practical: communication skills, conflict management, or understanding boundaries. Others are deeper psychological truths: awareness of our attachment style, recognition of self-worth, or insight into what we truly value in connection and intimacy. Growth comes when we pause long enough to reflect on these lessons, not with judgment or shame, but with curiosity and intentionality. Philosophic embracing grout means accepting that life is not about avoiding pain. It's about using it as a catalyst for evolution. The grief, the heartbreak, the sense of loss, these are not obstacles. They're raw material. They are fuel for transformation. The most resilient, most self-aware individuals are not those who avoid suffering. They are those who confront it, process it, and emerge with insight that shapes every future decision, every future relationship, and every future goal. When we approach life this way, we transform endings into opportunities, setbacks into wisdom, and vulnerability into strength. This mindset shift is especially important when considering future relationships. Too often, people enter new connections carrying unresolved pain, fear, or mistrust. This compromises intimacy and perpetuates old patterns. Growth allows you to approach new relationships with clarity. You understand your needs, you respect your boundaries, and you can recognize red flags and healthy signs with precision. You don't seek someone to complete you because you've already begun the work of completing yourself. You seek someone to share life with, a partnership based on mutual respect, trust, and emotional intelligence. Another critical aspect of embracing growth is developing emotional resilience. Life will continue to challenge you in relationships and beyond. Each experience, each encounter becomes a test of the strength and clarity you've cultivated. By embracing growth, you are essentially training your mind and heart to respond from wisdom rather than reactivity. You learn that rejection is not a reflection of your worth, that conflict can be navigated without self-erosion, and that love is not a lifeline to fill emptiness, but a shared experience between whole individuals. And here's the liberating truth. Growth does not require perfection. You do not need to fix yourself before loving again. You need awareness, intention, and courage. The courage to integrate your experiences, to confront vulnerability, and to step into life with the understanding that every ending carries seeds for a new beginning. So as you reflect on the loss you've experienced, ask yourself not just what you've lost, but what you are building from it. Ask yourself how this pain can illuminate your values, refine your emotional intelligence, and strengthen your capacity to love authentically in the future. The story of your life is not defined by heartbreak. It is defined by how you respond, how you grow, and how you use every challenge as a stepping stone to wisdom and fulfillment. Here's the closing truth to carry with you. Grief is temporary, lessons are enduring, and growth is limitless. When you embrace what you've learned, cultivate self-awareness, and step into future relationships with clarity and courage, you transform loss into empowerment, heartbreak into wisdom, and endings into the beginnings of a life that is richer, stronger, and more authentically yours than ever before. As we come to the end of this journey together, remember this: a breakup or divorce is never just an ending. It is a profound invitation to understand yourself more deeply, to confront your pain with courage, and to rebuild your life from a place of clarity and strength. You have the opportunity to feel your emotions fully, to recognize your patterns, to interrupt destructive thought cycles, and to reclaim your identity and self-worth. Every step you take toward conscious coping, reflection, and growth transforms loss into insight, heartbreak into wisdom, and vulnerability into power. The truth is, grief will come and it will challenge you. But within that challenge lies your greatest teacher. By embracing it, by learning from it, and by integrating what you've discovered about yourself, you are not only healing, you are evolving. You are becoming someone who can approach future relationships with awareness, resilience, and authenticity. You are becoming someone who defines their own worth, who does not rely on another to feel whole, and who can transform endings into beginnings that are richer, deeper, and more aligned with your highest potential. So step forward with courage. Honor your emotions, trust your growth, and recognize that every ending in life carries within it the seeds of a new chapter. Let this be your declaration that you will rise, you will learn. You will learn, and you will create a life defined not by loss, but by the strength, wisdom, and love you cultivate along the way. Remember this always. Your past does not determine your future. Your pain is not your weakness. Your growth is your power, and your life moving forward is yours to shape.